All right. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. I'm so excited to be talking to this human in healthcare for the very first time. But like I was just saying to you, I feel like I already know you because I heard you on another podcast of someone that we both know. And I've been using your baby, if you will, like a project you've been working on for several years, but I've been using it for the past couple of months and it's been changing the way I practice family medicine. And so when we connected over email, I thought it would be so cool to talk to you. I have like a million questions about how you came to help create an AI scribe, which is called AutoScribe. And so, yeah, I want to dive in and talk to you all about it. So first, why don't you introduce yourself? How would you like people to know you?
Awesome. Yeah, and thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really eager to explain how arrived at this aspect of my career, which sort of I fell into it actually. But so I'm Noah Crampton. I'm a family doctor and researcher at the Toronto Western Family Health Team. And I've always been sort of like, ever since I was a kid, a bit of a futurist, just thinking about like, okay, what's the next best thing? Like, I want to like think about how we could always improve. Like, we're taught quality improvement in healthcare, so like, can we actually do that in a very long-term, meaningful way? Like, those are the kind of things that always got me excited and got me juiced up. So, I'm not a computer programmer, but I did, obviously see like the power of AI in the consumer world. And I didn't really see that being deployed in the healthcare world, even though healthcare is like one of the most important, areas of society that you'd think humans would want to devote most of our resources to.
Yes.
So when I saw that discordance, I was like, okay, well, there's obviously a lack of leadership to make that the case. So that's when I decided let's embark on that journey.
That's amazing. So like, yeah, I mean, just to describe, I'll describe my experience of it as someone who's also, though I'm around a lot of tech, I don't know how to like code or anything. I just have some understanding of how stuff works. So, like, basically, yeah. So today I went to my family medicine clinic in Guelph, Ontario. So, like, Ontario Betty's. Um, the nurse like logged into AutoScribe for me with each of my patients. I'd walk in the room, tell them a little spiel about how I have a new computer program that is taking notes for me while we talk, but that it's private and all of that. And then I would just look at the patient and just have a conversation with them and not be taking any notes. Sometimes I'd turn to like generate a rec, but otherwise I just talked to the person. And then when the conversation was done, they left the room. I copied and pasted that note into my chart and I was done. And I did that for every single patient. It was glorious. So, that's how it's impacting my life. And I'm someone who actually I've worked a lot on charting efficiency. I took Sarah Smith's like charting course. So like the thing that it's saving me more than time is it's actually making my charts more detailed because the robot, I call it the robot, like I'm like, a robot's helping me. It's very good at listening. So it really hears so much of what the patient says and picks up on like what I'm counseling them for. So like my notes are more robust. And I get to just be a human in the room with my patient, which is my favorite thing. I talk about it all the time on the podcast. But now I don't have to be typing at the same time. So that's like the end product that I get to experience. What was the journey like getting to where now you're like giving it to other people and, have a business where you're selling it? Like, how did it actually get to a point where you could turn it into something that you offered to other people? Were there times where it was like really terrible and didn't work so well?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So to what I was mentioning earlier in terms of the futurist aspect of things, like I was basically betting on my understanding that AI was going to get good enough at language at some point in the future. And so I just had to like get all my ducks in a row for that eventuality, and I was proven correct. it did
Nice.
get it did get correct. Obviously, the chat GPT revolution, people are experiencing that in their private lives. So it's just how I understood the algorithms underpinning AI, that it could eventually get there. It just needed enough power to do it. But really for me personally, where I had to embark on this journey was as soon as I got into like medical school, honestly, like I applied to medical school because, exactly to your point, I wanted to be in like a my career devoted to the care for other humans.
Yeah.
Direct human relationships require engagement, with both verbal and nonverbal language, and under appreciating them, with all your cognitive load should be focused on the patient, right? And then using your clinical judgment and reasoning, etc. But as soon as I got to medical school, I thought we were using these very I used to compare it to when I was a kid, like MS-DOS, like it was like the pre-Windows era of technology, where it's just like, what am I doing with this user experience? Like, why is it taking up so much of my brain power to do what I need it to do, when it's actually pretty straightforward tasks that I need these electronic records to do? I first wanted to get the lay of the land. So my first actual research project in medical school was the impact of electronic medical records on patient communication. So I did a scoping review way back in mid 2000s, 2010s, I mean. And from there, I really got a sense of how that impact on communication was happening. But I never went, never did a computer science or engineering degree. So I think I just realized, I need to do extra training to be able to speak the language of technology, to cross those disciplines of like how we think as doctors versus how technologists think of problems. And so I decided to continue to, do my own research in that work. But then through residency, I decided, okay, I'm going to make this part of my career. So I actually did a master's of health informatics. And it was in that degree where I really started to understand those two languages. And one of my mentors during the master's was like, okay, like everyone knows we hate electronic records, and AI is getting really good enough. Maybe we can think about how AI can help to automate the charting process. And that was in 2018. And we were just, the new generation of AI, which, people may have heard of the terms neural networks or deep learning. Like these were all invented in Canada, by the way, in like Toronto and Montreal and Edmonton, like, hubs of AI. And we just didn't commercialize them into, user-friendly products very well. We've invented the technology, just, that it was, if you go to Google and, Amazon and all those other giant tech companies. So I thought, well, we have a rich ecosystem of healthcare here. We have a rich underpinning of AI technologists. Let's put them two together and see what we can create.
Wow. So did you know even that it was going to be around charts, or was it like, did you kind of like, AI people, what's possible? Because like there's so many different things that you're like, can they do everything for me? Like, how did you settle on it being like the scribe function?
So I reflected on all the pain points I experienced, from end to end, like as a doctor. And the one where you what you have to start realizing is AI is all about data sets, right? It's that if anything everybody takes from this podcast, think of data as in like, an Excel spreadsheet. Think of an Excel spreadsheet. It's you have a column of all the information, and it's like each of following column is describing what's in that first column, and we call that data labeling or data annotation. And you want to pick a data set that's actually pretty fixed. Like it's not like the dimensions of that data set don't evolve too much depending on use cases or electronic record systems used. Because if you do that, then there's always going to be error. It's just that's AI can't predict. It's something that it's not trained on. It's developed on the data sets it's given. So what I understood from the get-go is that the data set that you require to train the algorithm to predict charting, like a medical note, is actually a pretty fixed data set. It's in reality, we bought this data set in 2018, which is a large data set of doctor-patient conversation, the audio linked to the transcript, the text transcript of that, linked to the medical note that the doctor generated.
Oh,
Yeah. So, and then we labeled everything like this is a medication, this is like this is a symptom. Like we did all that labeling, a lot of effort. And with that, we were able to train our AI to predict, okay, if you hear this layman's terms in this conversation bubble between doctor and patient, it means this corresponding sentence in the medical note. And it gets really good. The more data you give it like that, the
it's
more,
so crazy.
yeah, the more it really picks up on it. It learns.
Wow.
So that's how it started. But we we had it really working well in terms of extraction accuracy. What I mean by that is like identifying the right words in the conversation and predicting it for the medical note. What we were lacking up until the ChatGPT revolution was actually like the syntax, like the grammar sentence structure. So that's what came in the last year, and that's what you're using now. It's just like this timeline of all these things that we've layered upon what we started in 2018.
Yeah. That's so interesting that like it didn't just come from anywhere on the internet. It's like it came from this data set that you had to like figure out how to train. This is so interesting to me, like how things are made. I just love how things are made. So that's like fascinating. I wonder if that's why I've like, this is very specific example, but I've noticed like a new medication, it has more trouble like recognizing the name of than an old one. Would that be because of that same phenomenon? Like it wouldn't have been from the original data set?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also it's the frequency of it appearing, like whether or not we've retrained it so that it ends up picking up on that. Yeah. So that's exactly right. It's
Yeah.
we're always trying to recalibrate its prediction because first of all, there's the speech recognition piece, which is, by the way, that's not our technology.
Mm,
Technology is not the audio switching to a text.
okay.
Our technology is the doctor patient layman's conversations predicting that to the medical note.
Right. Like you use someone else's speech recognition, like, because that's a part of it. I see how it creates a transcript, but you're not like editing that or changing that. Is there
No.
a way then that, so like say I edit my note, but that's not going to in any way let the bot know, right? Like the one example I had is I noticed it doesn't know the word Blexten. So there you go. But like, which is an antihistamine. So like, is there any way that how, if I'm correcting it, that can help the bot, or does it have to come from you guys?
No, so your edits do feedback.
Oh, okay.
But so are you saying that in this, like in the conversation transcript, you are seeing the word Blexten, but then you're not seeing that in the note?
It was just they may have misheard it, and our audio quality maybe was wrong. But then it just said it was like blag. I don't know what it was. I was like, I don't know that medication. So it might have just been like a little error too. I was just curious, like if we as the customers are also helping to feed its accuracy.
You are helping it if so in the specific case where, like, let's say in the speech recognition it did say the right word but it didn't get in the medical note. I suspect with Blexten it's actually the speech recognition piece was missed that.
Yeah.
That's a whole other technology that we would like to get to as a company, but it's actually quite complex to get. Think of it going back to data labeling. The way that works is, people have to label audio files of certain words.
Yeah.
That this is what this word should be converted to. Yeah.
That like someone literally just does that for all the words.
And unfortunately, and this is, I don't know if you want to go down this rabbit hole of the AI world.
I'm interested in this.
But basically, that this is like a lot of, labor in the developing worlds.
Oh.
Doing this. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. Because, well, then, I mean, and connected to that is I've noticed, like, obviously, this is English recognition in this right now, the program's in English, right? And so those of my patients where their English is not their first language and they may have various other accents, and also, maybe their grammar is less similar to mine, it's actually still pretty good, but it has slightly less detail, I've noticed, or that those may be ones where it picks up slightly more errors. And so it makes sense to me that, again, I mean, it's just tricky to go from audio to text if it's trying to match someone maybe saying the word the way that like a North American English speaker would say it, right? That's so tricky.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and they have even metrics on that, like what they call error rates. So they'll have, if you go to the speech to text websites, they'll say error rate for North American neutral English like 4%. So it's very good. Then
Yeah.
you get error rate for Indian subcontinent accent, error rate 12%, and it's just because of there's not as much data trained on those words and phrases. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope though, because like, well, I don't know. I guess healthcare doesn't have the most dollars, even though it's extremely important. Like you said at the beginning, like this is the tech lag is so real in healthcare. And it's like, what are we prioritizing as a society here, people? And along with that, like the lag, I mean, even that if it's labeled North American neutral English accent, isn't that interesting? Like from an equity perspective, this technology could so help us. Like it could help us literally understand our patients better if it was. So I hope that, especially when it's this tech, but all overlapped on something that's literally humanity serving like healthcare, hopefully then we can help it grow. So then it keeps bridging these gaps more.
Oh, exactly. And I like, so how I fell into this company, I think is a good segue based on what you just described there, because um so I always viewed myself as a researcher, like well, family doctor, but if I was ever going to do something complementary to my work, it was just going to be academic research. Um, but then I realized that, for digital tools to get into being actually used in the real world, like our societies is structured in capitalist way, like
Mhm.
that's just the most common way to get adoption is through a venture, right? A commercial venture. Um, but then I was thinking, okay, so I really want this to get adopted because I think it'll save both physicians, like it'll help with that crisis of admin burden that we're having, and make doctors more present with patients and allow better care, and patients will appreciate it as well. But beyond that, to your point about like how the ethics and values that we as doctors have in healthcare, we should start embedding that as part of how we develop, AI tools, right? From their foundation. Because if you do it that way, so as I said earlier, like with the data set building, then you can always, and you could acknowledge that these tools are based on imperfect data sets from where you get them. Like
Yeah.
I tried to get as good a data set as I can with the money I had at the beginning of this project, but it still was very imbalanced in some respects. But and that's why we decided to, like, okay, we're going to make this company, and we're going to call it Mutuo. And the reason we're going to call it Mutuo is because it's the Italian word for mutual, by the way. um, is to create a data set for AI, you want to think of it as a continuous dynamic between the creators of the data set and the algorithm builders with that data set. And it's a mutually beneficial arrangement where, us as physicians, we are charting, we are making medical notes, and they reflect the care we're providing. And how do we collect and label that data in a way that's in line with the public interest that we're trying to serve, right, for our patients, so that we can, as much as possible, embed a minimal amount of bias in the algorithms. So bias is a hot topic in AI. I encourage everyone to look it up, because getting to your point about discrimination based on the algorithms themselves, like, you can minimize them as much as possible, but until you fix the imbalance in the data sets that train the algorithms, you're not going to make that much headway. So how do you continuously address those data sets that you're building? You just have to be very thoughtful on how physicians are writing their notes, and then making sure that when we retrain our models with those notes, that we're labeling them in a way that is not exacerbating certain built-in biases, because you know, us as humans sometimes have biases, right? Like there's a lot of like processes that have to be built in to minimize that, and that's exactly what we're trying to do in this venture, which I think is different from the major corps in healthcare to date.
Oh man, that's like very refreshing to hear. Like I was saying before, I am often like an early adopter of different technology because I'm like, let's try and find something that actually makes my job easier, makes it easier to connect with patients. And I mean, like even at the level of prioritizing the user experience, which you think would be kind of like 101, like good business to like have happy users that like it's easy to use your product. That's not always the case, is it, Noah? Like, and then to think of like, oh yeah, like addressing inequity at the like the foundation of what your company's doing. That's wonderful. I love that idea. I think that's like that's the direction I hope that we actually all start thinking more about and addressing our biases, like and basically like questioning the way things have always been done. And especially when you have tech, it's like you can either mimic what's been done, and maybe that's a bit smoother because it's, you know, more people will adopt it. But what if you disrupt a little bit the way things have been done so things get more equitable, right? I think those kind of conversations are so interesting.
Exactly. And so like the old model in, you know, tech getting into healthcare is that it was like, okay, all bottom line driven. You know, like what do the C-suites of healthcare organizations in terms of like maximizing, you know, revenue through patient volumes or whatever, like that was all that was driving all of the product development, right? And the user experience was always at the end of that. But you can actually flip that on its head a little bit in the current day and age, because we've lived with these very challenging tools for
Yeah.
very long. And you can get buy-in if you educate the frontline clinicians on the principles of what AI can do. And once they have just like that basic understanding of where the power of these these technologies are coming from, then you center within the venture, within the, you know, whatever you're focusing on, um, the public interest of minimizing the bias, and from there also the user experience of it, right? Like, because we don't make it as an afterthought anymore, it is our first thought, so that we continuously get that mutually, you want to use it more, you want to provide that
Yeah.
high quality data, we want to provide you better algorithms, and that's that positive mutual dynamic that makes sense, right? Like compared to what, you know, so I'm sure I'm gonna get come up against a lot of resistance in terms of the old legacy way of how healthcare, you know, procurement for IT products occur. But I'm hoping there'll be a bit of a, you know, frontline clinician groundswell in support of the model that we're building here.
That would be great. I mean, hopefully if now it would be nice if it's always been that way, but like, hey, people in charge, like listening to the people who are actually taking care of the patients, like, and investing in our experience and our well-being and in what we find actually effective to do our jobs. That's like good to invest in.
Yeah,
Just like,
exactly.
I don't know why I have to explain that, but apparently we do. You know? Okay. Well, I have a question that's actually it's like a bit of a side thing. I'm curious. So like you're a family physician, you have a practice at Toronto Western, like in the hospital or
There's a family health team that's like across the street. Yeah, they're part of UHN.
okay. So I'm curious, like, so you always had this passion, so it's always been a piece of what you do, but how do you fold it in? You know, because like if you want, being a family physician could be a 7-day job. Don't recommend it. But like, how do you balance the clinical work with this other work that it clearly is like lighting you up and also fueling your desire to wake up every morning? Like, how did you balance all of that? And do you find it tricky at times?
Oh yeah, it's you know, trying to schedule many different things whose schedules don't align. But
Yes.
um, but yeah, I mean, so as I mentioned, I actually view myself first and foremost as a researcher, and I did a master's of health informatics so I could be a researcher in digital health. So
Hmm.
you know, essentially like approaches to novel development, evaluations of digital health tools. Um, so I was always viewed myself on the, you know, there is a tool that exists, or a budding tool. How do I evaluate it so that it works for family doctors or health services in general, right? That's basically what I was trained in my master's.
Hmm.
Um, and I got hired at Toronto Western as a clinician researcher. So I've always been tasked with 2 days of clinic, and the rest is actually research on digital health.
Cool.
It just so happens that I'm spinning off some of that research into a commercial venture. My motives for it are probably not the typical profit seeking motives of others out there, but I, uh, I, uh, I'm able to balance it because it's so in line with my research activities, right?
Mhm.
Like it's part and parcel in so many ways.
Yeah.
And then in my clinic, I often use Autoscribe itself and make sure it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's tricky. There are some weeks where um, I'm, you know, having to forego booking a very important meeting because I'm in clinic, and that's just part of the setup I have.
Yeah.
But you know, I no matter how successful my company becomes, I always want to have both of those other hats. So both like at least have a clinic per day per week, one time per week, and also research, because independence, not affected by commercial motives. Research is really, really important for proper evidence.
Yeah. It's you're so uniquely positioned to be like you're your own customer, and then you also have your own, I mean, no one can be actually objective, but like you have this other motivation beyond making some dollars, which like I'm not against, but also like if it's the primary reason we're doing a thing, things can get distorted easily. That's so cool. And practically speaking, then do you share your practice with other clinicians and you kind of do like shared care? How does that work?
So no, when you're hired as a clinician investigator, you're only expected to work a couple days a week.
Yeah.
Uh, so my roster size is corresponding to that amount of
Oh,
days.
okay. Nice.
Yeah,
So they know Dr. Crampton's, these are their days. And then, oh, that's lovely. And you have your little flock.
that's right.
Cool. How have they taken to you having AutoScribe and fumbling through it together? Any objections?
Um, so a lot of them, yeah, they've become used to it. But so one thing I'll just like disclose up front is that um I'm not officially using it with my patients at Toronto Western just yet because they have very strong privacy and security assessments.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But I do work at a walk-in clinic once a week as well, where they're thrilled that I'm using it.
Yeah.
And those patients are always curious because they're not, I don't know them as deeply as I do my Toronto Western patient. My Toronto Western patients know what I'm up to as well, and we've done like practice sessions, but it's not been truly a real encounter. So still waiting to get through that privacy and security with UHN, but hopefully we'll get there.
That's okay. So and not speaking, of course, to any of the specific organizations in which you're in conversation, but I will like no affiliate with UHN at all, but like the conversations about privacy, sometimes I just have to take deep breaths because I am like an impatient person and I'm hungry to get the help. And it feels like I don't want everyone's business splashed all over the internet. It's good to have privacy, but like sometimes the layers are a lot. They seem prohibitive to using things at times.
Yeah. So this is another societal decision, and especially in Canada, we are very, very strict here in Canada
Yes.
about
Yeah.
these things. And so, uh, for instance, in Ontario, we have a legislation called PHIPA, which they're trying to improve in terms of its clarity, but up until this point, the way it's been actually leveraged in um at the in healthcare organizations is like it's up to the in-house legal counsel basically of a healthcare organization to interpret like how strict they have
Geez.
to be on these pieces, right? And it's like that's why there's no uniform approach between healthcare organizations. Each healthcare organization is like doing their own um approach to privacy and security. And so some are extremely, extremely strict, which that's an approach, but yeah, I mean it slows things down in terms of getting the fixes that we need for the crisis in our healthcare resources in place.
Yeah, I'll say. And like, um, actually, I guess speaking to that, because I had one of the other docs in my office I've been raving about. So she just started today and she's like, how does it actually work on the back end? I was like, I actually don't know. So, well, say someone like even just for a patient or clinician perspective, like how things are kept private because Autoscribe is like browser based. And so I know some of it, like it's got the old two-factor authentication, make sure you need double passwords to get in, that kind of thing. But I think most people are most paranoid or worried about how or if the recordings are saved somehow on the back end, if they're then mined for data that's going to be sold to someone. I think those are the key kind of things that I've heard of being like, I'm not sure. So what can you sort of speak to around those concerns or questions?
Yeah, exactly. So we have to be prepared to address those concerns up front, right?
Yeah.
um so first of all, getting to those legislations, PHIPA being another one, PIPEDA being another one for Canada, we had to ensure that the way we designed the application is in compliance, since we are uh, intaking and storing and managing personal health information, right? Um, so we had, in order to prove that, we had to do what's called a privacy impact assessment, or PIA for short, which is done by a third party. Like they are standalone. I have no connection with them, and they did a assessment of us to verify that we are in compliance with that legislation. And we are in compliance, and we in fact adhere in many respects to it. So, for example, on the concerns raised by your colleagues there, we store the audio up to 28 days, and it's really just because in case there's like a major error as soon as after there's a visit is done. It's we call it for quality assurance purposes, because as I was saying earlier, our company is not dealing with, as it stands, with the audio data. We're dealing with the conversation transcript linked to the medical note. And so we actually don't need to store that data indefinitely to improve our AI algorithms. And 28 days has been deemed, according to those legal thinkers on how the legislation should be interpreted, as a sort of data in transit time frame. So it's not baked forever as the medical true medical source of because if this was subpoenaed, for instance,
Yes.
would it be deemed more accurate than the doctor's medical note, right? So in the thinking is that 28 days gives enough time, and this was other organizations ascribe to this as well, that 28 days is enough time to before we have to say, okay, this is the final version
Right.
of the data. So that's why we did it that way. But the other data, the text data, we are keeping, but nobody's accessing. It's just the AI algorithms access it for improving.
Yeah.
And that we're storing the data exactly the same safety security guards as the EMRs themselves. So we've done the same, what we call threat risk assessment and penetration testing, and we have all the documentation to prove that. By the way, if anyone wants to do a deep dive, become an AutoScribe customer, we're happy to send that all off to them.
Nice.
um, and it goes without saying, we are definitely not selling this on to anyone. On the flip side, in fact, we're trying to work with forward thinkers on secondary use for public interest of the data, rather than selling. So that's definitely not happening.
Very cool. Yeah. I think that's just like people get nervous about it. Though it's been fascinating, so I've said my little spiel of with all the different patients, and like I had one person be like, I don't want my voice recorded. So then we just didn't use it, and that was fine. But then most people are just like, yeah, it's fine. And some people are like, I have a phone, I have an Amazon, whatever. They're all listening to me anyway. Like people are sort of pretty blasé about like, well, what's privacy? Like it's so interesting. And I found that true even in other areas of healthcare where they're like, isn't there just like a big database where everyone in healthcare can look up my stuff? And they're like, well, no, because it's so private. And they're like, who cares? Make my healthcare more efficient. Like I know that's not everybody, but like there's such a desire for us to be better connected with each other and be more efficient with each other. Like so much of our healthcare is so inefficient, faxing, and patients, at least some of them, appear to really also be on board with that. So you do wonder, like, who are we protecting here? And yeah, what's in the best interest of everybody,
Yeah, I'm totally agreement with you. And so we've done as much as we can with being in compliance with privacy and security without inhibiting the application's functionality itself, because we were just like, we got to get this to work.
Yes.
And so that's, for instance, that's the call we had to make with, okay, we're storing the text data, just like EMR stores data, we're going to be storing that data. It's going to be used for AI improvement rather than for clinical documentation purposes. But people are going to get used to that because that's just how AI works. It needs that data, right?
Yeah, it's like, I'm picturing it like a little robot and it's just like farming and learning. It's in a big library. Is that what it looks like? Like a little robot in a library? That's really cool. Wow. So then like, okay, so you're pretty busy and you're trying to juggle all the hats, how can you see this like moving forward? Like, I guess, how's it going with AutoScribe? Like, do you find that there's been some uptake and you feel like it's picking up some speed? Or like, what's been feedback you've been hearing from other people?
Oh yeah, we've actually had to turn down our marketing a little bit because we were just like, we're a small team, right? So word of mouth is really good right now.
Yeah.
Imagine. So we're happy to just ride the word of mouth train for a little bit. Because yeah, like we're ready to scale and grow as needed. But we also need to put in place the management team that can help manage that kind of growth.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of positive feedback. I'd say the biggest issue, and it sort of relates to what we were talking about earlier, is for if it's not integrated with their existing EMR. So I'm still beholden to them, those legacy products, but some of them are more forward looking than others, right? So some are easy. The barrier for integration is more reasonable for fostering an open ecosystem. Others they view themselves as a walled garden, so it's like very, very, very difficult to do integration. So the ones that the doctors like, we have a standalone application, and it's like we just really want it in the EMR itself.
Yeah.
So that's when we don't get full uptake. But otherwise, as in your workflow, you're seeing end to end what that experience is like when it is integrated, right? So that's what it's supposed to do, is just save a lot of time. It's not perfect every time, but it should save you a lot on your charting effort, and you're able to be present with your patient, right?
Yeah. Like I know I gave that Blexen example, but that's because it was one of the only times it didn't say the right word. Like otherwise, I'm like, that's even better than I would have said it. Like it's actually astonishing how it sorts it all. And there was like one where it was like a mental health visit, and It said as a part of my plan is like discussed boundaries and self-compassion. I was like, I did discuss those things and I would never think to document it, but it was so nice to have this like kind of specific reminder of some of the topics we talked about. Like it's such a, it's, and like other things like well babies have always been tricky because you can't document because half the time you're like trying to like watch the kid and then the parents peppering you with the questions. And then also they have questions for themselves because they're having trouble breastfeeding. And now it's just all documenting behind me. Like I'm just giving other examples of how like it is so worth it. And like, so for us, we figured out a way now for like the nurse to help us stay logged in a bit more. But honestly, like we're used to putting in a password. So putting in two. And so we use PS Suite, like TELUS PS Suite. And I was really fascinated with the kind of integration that you were able to do because I know how hard it is to get any kind of integration with that
Yeah.
particular company, having other products and seeing like through the help menu. I thought that was really fascinating. This is maybe too inside baseball, but this is how I always do my podcast. I just talk about what I'm interested in. But like, so like, do you have to like talk to each of these different EMRs and like have meetings with them and have them try and share their code with you and all that fun stuff?
Exactly. Yeah. And so some conversations are much more fruitful than others. And we're sort of at the behest, given that I really don't want to go in to become an EMR vendor myself. I think it is a very heartache filled business to get into.
Yeah, for sure.
um, and it's just like there's like it is what it is. There's a lot of like lock-in of doctors into their processes in their EMR. Like to have them to switch to a different one is just like a big endeavor that I do not want to go down. So I'm trying to go through another challenge,
Yeah.
which is like trying to convince these EMR vendors that it's worth we're partnering with us because we're embedding the clinician and patient value system within our company from the get-go. Clinicians are going to appreciate that. So, partner with us. And it's resonating with some, not with others.
Sure. That sounds about right. Oh, that's so interesting. Well, is there anything else that you want people listening to know, I guess, about Autoscribe in general? Like maybe starting with that. Is there anything that you love talking about this that you want to make sure that we cover?
Yeah, look, it's really easy to sign up now. You just have to go to our website at signup.mutuohealth.com. You'll just look for the plan that works for you. We're very flexible in our plans. And then, review our contract, obviously. You want to make sure it's in line with what you feel comfortable in terms of data sharing, and then there's a 1 month free trial. So just put that out there. But yeah, I mean, like I'm happy, or my team's happy to just get on Zoom like this, just explain why we're doing what we're doing, because
Yeah.
this is a passion project to see if we can at least change a pretty what's been viewed as a pretty unchangeable aspect of healthcare. Um, and we're how the approach we're trying to take to do it. So if you just want to chat with us, pick our brains about it, we're really happy to get on individual calls like that. So and then because we want to also, one of the things that I think we're quite good at our company is, each clinic and organization, their workflow is very unique, right? And there's just like a lot of unique implementations of forms and processes and whatnot. So we're really good at helping with the change management of making it work for your setting. I hope you've experienced that challenge just as you described. We've actually worked with you last week in terms of trying to make so that's the kind of the thing we're trying to just make it work for everybody's context. And yeah, and I think the last thing that I'll say is just about where we're going with the product itself. So this is a bit of a stay tuned, but you already have the charting feature, but we're actually going to move into what's called the suggestions feature. So basically, if you said to your patient, I'm going to prescribe you metformin 500 milligrams twice a day, there's going to be suggestions that auto prepares that prescription screen to say, did you want to do this, and accept, and review and accept, right? Rather than you having to like click 10 times, fill in like the text of the prescription field, so
Yeah.
all these small steps of EMR use can be automated with AI now. So we're just gonna slowly tackle one at a time.
Is that going to be integrated? Like that one would need to be integrated. So that would
Yeah.
be EMR dependent, but then
Yeah. And
that's,
so some EMRs are cooperating, as I said. So
yeah.
as I think what I'm trying to like accomplish here is that there's just going to be so many impactful use cases
Yeah.
that are thought through at the clinician lens, because we are the ones living the pain points, right?
Yes.
um, that the EMRs that agree to partner with us on those specific use cases are the ones that maybe doctors actually might change EMRs. Like I don't know. It's a
No.
hypothesis,
Okay, I'm
because
just picturing. So, because like I know it's good. Like I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do some blood work. And I like to often say to the patient, like, oh, I'm going to check your thyroid. I'm going to check your thing. I'm picturing that it's populating it.
in real
I
time.
would change so fast. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. Like that would make a difference. Like it was interesting. We did research about different EMRs at one point because everyone's EMR has pain points in it, including ours. And there was interesting features like online booking or whatever, but like there wasn't one where like the user experience was like, we're definitely prioritizing that number one. And where you were like, it was so much faster. Like there would just be so much change management for a different set of challenges. But like what you're describing, I like have goosebumps. Like that would be such a game changer.
Right. So that is what's coming down the pipeline with what we're doing and with the EMRs that are supportive of us. So stay tuned.
Okay, that is so exciting. And the other thing I will say is, at least at this point, when you ask for support, you get wonderful support. And it might be Noah, and it also might be his brother, Jeff, who are the two people I've interacted with. And I love that. Like you're in business with your brother. Are there other siblings involved too, or is it just the two of you
There's
with the
another one.
family? No, there is. That's amazing. Are you three siblings, like the business basically, or are there other people too?
No. There's like about a dozen of us, but
Wow.
I come from a family of business people, like my mom and my grandparents and everyone. So I'm the only one that didn't go into business. I went to medicine, but then I'm
Wow.
okay. I have to fix a bit of medicine with some business. Is what ended up
Yes. You
happening.
were the black sheep being the physician, but now you've come back to the fold.
That's right.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh, keeping it in the family. That's great. Well, that's something I've never, I think, said on this podcast, but my father is David Chan, who made Oscar. I don't know if you know that, but I was never in business with my dad, but I like interned for him a bit. That's my only in business in eHealth connection. But there's something about family and eHealth spaces. Like I can think of other companies where it's the father and brothers that made the company. I just think that's hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's just because there's a very deep trust there, and
Yeah.
understanding of their competency and skill set, right? So it's really been enjoyable working with my brothers.
Oh, that's and then because like if it went wrong, it could go real wrong. So obviously you've got a good trusting relationship, which is nice.
Yes.
I love that. Well, thank you for all your time. I think one other question I usually ask at the end is like, so thinking of people who listen, who are people who are working in healthcare, clinicians struggling maybe with a bit of burnout, trying to find ways to make their lives a bit more human and bring more of their humanity to healthcare. What advice, like what helps you keep your humanity in all the spaces, like the business space, the research space, and the clinical space? Like, what helps you ground your humanity in all of those spaces?
Um, so everyone has their own motivations for things, and mine is like a continuous curiosity and just like dedication to trying to solve the issues that are preventing us from being human. Right. So
Yeah.
I feel very fulfilled when I have small wins, like when you tell me exactly like you just said at the beginning that we're much more present with your patients. They probably felt that. I think that's exactly what gets me going to do it again for all those three aspects. So my business, my research, my clinic, like And when one is succeeding, I bring that into the other domains of just like, okay, what am I taking from those other spaces, like this individual patient encounter that I'm having as a family doctor right now? What am I learning from this patient that I could then translate into how I'm going to design a new feature for Autoscribe? Like I'm always having those wheels turning in my head, but that works for me. So everyone has to find what, drives them. And if you are in the 7 days a week clinic model, which it should be a choice that you are doing that. It shouldn't be something that you feel trapped in.
Yeah.
Right. So if that is what you are doing, then do some self-reflection about, okay, so I'm getting a lot of fulfillment from this career path, and the reason why is, and let's write that down.
Oh, it's so good. Put it on a sticky somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much. Well, I'll make sure to include all the links. If you Google it, you have to Google Mutuo Health Autoscribe. If you just Google Autoscribe, there's other random stuff comes up, was my experience of my Google algorithm. So, but I'll put the links in the show notes and everything. And thank you. I just feel so inspired. It's so inspiring to have other people who it's hard to think about doing more than medicine sometimes when medicine feels so hard. But I feel the same way with the other stuff I'm doing. This other stuff you're doing is what then gives you the fuel to keep practicing medicine as well. And I just love meeting other people who are doing that. So thank you so much.
And thank you for inviting me. It's been awesome.
Awesome.